Well, this might be a case of too little, too late. Adidas shares are losing another 2% at this hour after the German sports apparel giant, amidst a firestorm of boycott threats and downgrades, today officially cut ties with Kanye West and his Yeezy shoe brand. Weeks after West made multiple anti-Semitic outbursts, Adidas came under fire for slow-walking its decision on whether to terminate the partnership. Early this morning, though, Adidas announced, quote, Adidas does not tolerate anti-Semitism and any other sort of hate speech. Ye's recent comments and actions have been unacceptable, hateful, and dangerous, and they violate the company's values of diversity and inclusion and mutual respect and fairness. Adidas added it expects to be negatively impacted by the breakup of its collab with Yeezy, with losses of up to $250 or so million. Following Adidas' Yeezy termination, Gap, which already, by the way, cut its Kanye deal off last month, announced that all leftover Yeezy merchandise will be cleaned off the shelves. And they also pulled the plug on the YeezyGap.com website. That stock is up 1.25%, and this quarter alone, it is up 30%. So Adidas and the Gap may be done with Yeezy, but what should these retailers have done to better handle what is now Kanye's radioactive brand? Let's bring in two of the nation's top crisis communications experts. Red Banyan's Evan Nierman, author of Crisis Averted, PR Strategies to Protect Your Reputation and the Bottom Line, and Erico Communications' Eric Yaverbaum. He's author of Public Relations for Dummies. Great title, Eric. Eric, I do want to begin with you. And first, Kanye has said a bunch of stuff, not just the anti-Semitic stuff. He said slavery is a choice. But more recently, after he first said anti-Semitic things, he then doubled down and said very recently, I can say anti-Semitic things and Adidas can't drop me. Well, they just dropped him.
Yes, they did.
But
literally challenging
But
them.
is Adidas a day late, a dollar short?
Slow walk is an understatement. I learned this 4 decades ago from Elizabeth Dole. The worst time to prepare is when the water's rising. Adidas had so much time. This isn't a shocker. Kanye's been going off the wall for a long time now. We've seen this trend with him. They should have had a plan. They definitely did not have a plan. And all of corporate America, cautionary tale. If you do not have a crisis plan in place, you're making a big mistake. And when you tie yourself to a name, a famous person, which many brands do, this is what you get.
Well, you're very vulnerable to it. You actually have done a lot of work with European brands. Were they just thinking this controversy would kind of die down? Because some controversies do.
I don't think anybody was thinking this controversy was going to die down except maybe Adidas. They're literally last to the party. What are they doing? Who is going to want to wear that brand now? How can we, in good conscience, wear their footwear?
Evan, what was Adidas' biggest mistake as soon as this thing started bubbling up, which was early October?
Well, I think as Eric pointed out, it took Adidas a little time, but I have a little bit of a different take. I actually think they're a brand who took a stand, and I think long term, looking forward, we're going to spend time thinking about the fact that they cut ties with Ye, as opposed to whether it took them a couple of days or a couple of weeks. I think at the end of the day, they really had no choice. Kanye West or Ye, he dared them. He said he could literally walk around and say anti-Semitic things and Adidas couldn't drop him. Well, they just called his bluff. They showed that they could. And the bottom line is the more this guy runs his mouth, the more brands and his business partners are going to run away from him.
Well, you know, maybe the ends justify the means is what I'm hearing you say, instead of how long did it actually take. You just mentioned brands that immediately cut him off. Twitter and Insta locked him out when he first said, he said DEFCON 3 on the Jews. I think he meant DEFCON, but maybe he did mean something more violent. I don't know. We don't know what's inside his head. But you also had Balenciaga, Gap, which we have already talked about, JP Morgan, CAA, his talent agency, Def Jam Records, his own label, completely cutting him loose. You had Vogue saying, we're done with you. Vogue had put him on the cover a couple of times. So now is he toxic forever, Evan?
Most likely. His biggest enemy is himself. And for him to run around now and go before the cameras and claim that this is somehow he's the victim or that this is a cancel culture matter is absurd. This is a Kanye culture matter. He brought this on himself. And when faced with remarks that were clearly offensive, out of step with what's publicly acceptable, anti-Semitic, undeniably prejudiced. He doubled, he tripled, he quadrupled down. So he has, without a doubt, harmed his brand, not just short term and midterm, but for the long term.
It is pretty stunning to look at, as a business network, the reaction to the stocks involved. If you look at Gap, Eric, Gap dumped him in September. Their stock is up 30% this month. Adidas has dragged its feet. Adidas has a bunch of inventory issues, too, but they are down more than 60% year to date. So this has not helped, and they're dumping him. Certainly hasn't helped. Morgan Stanley downgraded them. But if in this world right now, if Adidas hired you, where should it go from here?
Well, if I was advising Adidas, I would say this is a teachable moment. This doesn't have to be a cancel culture moment, even though it's going to be. The problem with this particular situation is he's not done putting his big foot in his mouth yet. It's going to get worse for him. That's just him, which means he's going to drag the last person to let go of him down even further. And, you know, unfortunately, deservedly so. Look what's going on in L.A. It's so sad to see how the general public is reacting to what he's saying. Right. He has incited fear in absolutely everybody, and he's not done.
Yeah, in fact, I believe you're referencing what we showed our viewers yesterday, which was the 405 freeway.
Yes.
There was an overpass, and I happened to be in L.A. this weekend, and on the overpass, there was a sign, here it is on your screen, that says, Kanye is right about the Jews. And this was put together by a sort of a fringe hate group. Let's hope most hate groups are fringe. But also, Beverly Hills, the police had put out a notice saying that there were anti-Semitic flyers that were being passed out. So this is horrible.
I have 3 friends who sent me that picture driving under that
it went viral
before I ever saw it on the news.
It went viral. Evan, let me give you a challenge. Let's say I'm Kanye West, which I wouldn't be because I'm Jewish. But let's say I said, I'm in a big load of trouble. Fix this situation. I'm hiring you. What would you do? Can he burnish his brand?
Well, the first thing I would tell him to do is stop talking. Take a break from media and calm yourself. Also, I would advise him to get back on whatever medication he has available to him, because I think it would help him. I think he needs to really pause for a moment, and in order for him to have any shot at rehabilitating his image, he's going to have to own what he said, not out of a place of pride, but out of a place of regret. He has to be willing to understand why his remarks were so offensive, so beyond the pale. Instead of rebuffing invitations from Holocaust museums to learn more, he needs to be open to the idea that he has a teachable moment before him as well. Until he stops talking and he starts listening, there's no chance.
Well, Scott Galloway, the great marketing professor from NYU, said that when you step in it like this, there are 3 things you need to do immediately. Number 1, acknowledge it. Number 2, apologize for it. Number 3, overcorrect. He's done none of them.
Apologize, absorb what you could learn. And I'll tell you, don't call my agency. You can call Evan. Don't call me.
It's good to see you both, Eric, Evan. Both are crisis managers with great advice on how not to behave if you are a company faced with this kind of controversy. Thank you both. Really appreciate it.